In August 2007, 3-year-old Jeremy Larson went hiking in the Red Hills near Cimarron County, Oklahoma. He became disoriented and got lost for 3 days when he was found by a search and rescue team. Jeremy recounted how he had repeatedly seen himself in the distance, walking parallel to him. At first, he thought it was another hiker, but as the second figure mimicked his every move, Jeremy realized he was staring at an exact replica of himself a couple of years after his rescue. Jeremy posted his story online. This is his story. "My name's Jeremy Lon, and I'm writing this down because I need to get it out of my head. I'm not a writer or anything, so sorry if this isn't great, but I have to tell someone what happened to me. Back in August 2007, I was 23 then, and I thought I knew everything. Boy, was I wrong. It all started when I decided to go hiking in the Red Hills near Cimarron County, Oklahoma. I'd never been there before, but I'd heard it was beautiful, and it was at first. The red clay formations were really something else. I remember thinking they looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. I'd always been into hiking ever since I was a kid. My dad used to take me and my little sister Sarah on camping trips every summer. We'd explore the woods near our home in Tulsa, and as I got older, I started venturing out on my own. By the time I was in college, I was tackling more challenging trails. The Red Hills seemed like the next logical step in my hiking journey. I spent weeks planning this trip. I pored over maps, read hiking forums, and even chatted with a few locals who'd been to the area. Everyone said it was a beautiful but challenging hike. Make sure you prepared, they all warned. I thought I was. I had my backpack loaded with water, energy bars, a first aid kit, and all the other essentials. I even splurged on a new pair of hiking boots for the occasion. The night before I left, I had dinner with my parents, and Sarah Mum fussed over me as usual. "Are you sure you have enough water?" she asked for the 800th time. "Yes, Mom," I said, trying not to roll my eyes. "I've got plenty of water, food, and everything else I need." Dad clapped me on the shoulder. "He'll be fine, honey. Our boy knows what he's doing." I wish I could go back to that moment and tell myself to listen to Mom's worries. Maybe if I had, things would have turned out differently. I set out early on the 15th of August. It was hot as hell. Even in the morning, the sun was barely up, and already I could feel sweat trickling down my back, but I was excited as I started down the trail. I felt that familiar rush of adrenaline I always got at the beginning of a hike. The first few hours were amazing. The landscape was unlike anything I had ever seen before. The red clay hills stretched out as far as the eye could see, broken up by patches of scrubby vegetation and the occasional twisted juniper tree. I took dozens of pictures on my old flip phone, wishing I had a better camera to capture the beauty around me. I remember stopping for lunch around noon. I found a flat rock overlooking a particularly spectacular view and sat down to eat one of my energy bars. As I munched, I pulled out my map to check my progress. According to my calculations, I was making good time. I figured I'd reach my planned campsite by late afternoon. That's when things started to go wrong, though I didn't realize it at the time. As I stood up to continue my hike, I noticed that the trail ahead looked different from what I expected. The map showed a gradual incline, but what I was seeing was a steep descent into a narrow valley. I frowned, double-checking my position. Must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. I muttered to myself, wiping sweat from my brow. I decided to backtrack a bit, hoping to find a familiar marker that would help me get my bearings. As I walked, an uneasy feeling began to creep over me. The landscape seemed to shift and change, with each step becoming increasingly unfamiliar. Hours passed, and my unease grew into full-blown panic. Was lost, utterly and completely lost in the vast expanse of the Red Hills. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. That's when I saw it. For the first time in the distance, silhouetted against the setting sun, was a figure. My heart leaped with hope. Another hiker. Maybe they could help me find my way back. I raised my arm, waving frantically. "Hey, over here." I called out. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it raised its arm in a mirror image of my own movement. I froze, my arm still half raised. I squinted, trying to get a better look at the distant hiker. As my eyes adjusted, a chill ran down my spine. Despite the oppressive heat, the figure looked exactly like me. I blinked hard, convinced I must be seeing things. When I opened my eyes again, the figure was gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the spot where I'd seen myself, my mind raised, trying to make sense of what had just happened. "It's just the heat," I said aloud, trying to convince myself. "You're dehydrated, and your mind is playing tricks on you." But deep down I knew it was more than that. What I'd seen felt real, too real to be a simple hallucination. As darkness fell, I realized I had no choice but to make camp for the night. I found a small outcropping of rocks that offered some shelter and set up my sleeping bag. I tried to eat another energy bar, but my stomach was inane. Every sound made me jump, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure, my doppelganger, standing in the distance. When I did manage to doze off, my dreams were filled with endless red hills and a shadowy version of myself, always just out of reach. I woke up as the first light of dawn was breaking over the hills. For a moment I forgot where I was and why I felt so uneasy. Then it all came rushing back. I was lost, and I had seen something impossible. I packed up my gear with shaking hands and set out again, determined to find my way back to civilization. The morning was cool, but I knew it wouldn't last long. I needed to cover as much ground as possible before the heat of the day set in. As I walked, I tried to focus on practical things. I checked my water supply. I had about half left. If I rationed it carefully, it might last another day or two. Food was less of a concern. I had packed more than enough energy bars and trail mix. The real problem was that I had no idea which direction would lead me back to the trailhead. It was around midday when I saw it again. There, about 100 yards away, was the figure. It was unmistakably me. Same build, same clothes, same backpack. My breath caught in my throat as I watched the doppelganger mimic my every move. "This isn't real," I whispered, squeezing my eyes shut. "This can't be real." When I opened them again, the figure was gone. I let out a shaky breath, relief washing over me, but the relief was short-lived. As I continued my journey, the doppelganger appeared again and again, always at a distance, always mirroring my actions. I tried everything I could think of to make it go away. I shouted at it, threw rocks in its direction, even tried to run towards it once, but it always vanished before I could get close, only to reappear somewhere else moments later. By the end of the second day, I was a mess. I was sunburned, dehydrated, and thoroughly spooked. I had been walking for hours, but I felt like I was going in circles. Every hill looked the same, every rock formation identical to the last. That night, as I huddled in my sleeping bag, I heard something moving in the darkness. It sounded like footsteps circling my campsite. I called out, my voice cracking with fear, but there was no response, just the steady sound of footsteps, never getting closer, but never going away. I didn't sleep at all that night. The third day was the worst. I was out of water and the heat was unbearable. My thoughts were becoming jumbled and I kept seeing things out of the corner of my eye. Sometimes it was my doppelganger, sometimes it was shapes I couldn't quite make out. I started talking to myself, trying to stay sane. "Come on, Jeremy," I'd mutter. "You can do this. Just keep walking. Someone will find you." But as the day wore on, I began to lose hope. I was so tired, so thirsty. Several times I thought about just lying down and giving up, but something kept me going. Maybe it was survival instinct, or maybe it was the fear of what might happen if I stopped moving. It was late afternoon when I heard the voices. At first I thought it was another hallucination, but then I heard it again, people calling out, and the faint sound of a helicopter in the distance here. I tried to shout, but my voice was barely a croak. I stumbled towards the sound, my legs barely supporting me, and then I saw them, a search and rescue team, making their way over a nearby hill. I waved my arms frantically, using the last of my strength to call out to them. The next few hours were a blur. I remember being loaded into a helicopter, someone putting an IV in my arm, voices asking me questions I couldn't quite understand. I kept trying to tell them about what I'd seen, about my doppelganger, but the words wouldn't come out right. I spent 3 days in the hospital recovering from severe dehydration and heat exhaustion. My family was there, worried, sick. Sarah hardly left my side, and Mom cried every time she looked at me. Dad tried to keep a brave face, but I could see the fear in his eyes. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive. They told me that what I'd experienced, the doppelganger, the footsteps at night, were all hallucinations caused by the extreme conditions. Part of me wanted to believe them. It would be easier, safer to think that it had all been in my head, but I knew the truth. What I'd seen out there in the Red Hills was real, Couldn't explain it, but I knew it with a certainty that went beyond LIC or reason. I tried to tell my family, the doctors, even the police officers who came to take my statement, but I could see the doubt in their eyes, the way they exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking. No one believed me. After a week, I was released from the hospital and sent home. Everyone told me to rest, to take it easy and give myself time to recover, but I couldn't relax. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those red hills and my other self walking, always just out of reach. I started researching, spending hours online looking for any similar experiences. I found a few stories, hikers who claimed to have seen their doubles, old folklore about doppelgangers, but nothing quite matched what I'd been through. A week after I got home, it happened again. I was in my bathroom brushing my teeth before bed. I glanced up at the mirror, and there it was, my double standing right behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. When I looked back at the mirror, it was gone. I didn't sleep that night or the next. I started avoiding mirrors, covering them up with sheets. I stopped going out, afraid of what I might see in reflective shop windows or mirrors. My family was worried. They thought I was suffering from PTSD, which I guess wasn't entirely wrong. But how could I explain to them that my trauma wasn't just from being lost, but from what I'd seen out there? I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Anderson. She was kind and patient, but I could tell she didn't believe me either. She talked about stress responses and the mind's way of coping with trauma. I nodded along, but inside I was screaming. This wasn't in my head. It was real, and it was still happening. Months passed. I tried to go back to my normal life, but nothing felt normal anymore. I quit my job at the local hardware store. I couldn't handle being around all those mirrors in the home decor section. I barely left my parents' house, where I'd moved back in after the incident. Sarah tried her best to help. She'd come over with movies or board games, anything to distract me, but I could see the worry in her eyes, the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking. "Jeremy," she said one day, "you need to talk to someone who will." "I believe you." I laughed bitterly. "Who's going to believe me, Sarah? Not even you believe me." She was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe I don't understand what happened to you," she finally said, "but I believe that. You believe it, and that's enough for me to know. You need help." That conversation stuck with me. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I did need to find someone who would listen, really listen, without trying to explain it away. That's when I found the online forum. It was a small community, just a few dozen irregular posters, but they all had stories similar to mine. People who had seen their doubles, who had experienced impossible things that no one else believed. For the first time since my experience in the Red Hills, I felt like I wasn't alone. I started posting regularly, sharing my story and reading others. Some were clearly hoaxes or the ramblings of disturbed minds, but others rang true. In a way I couldn't explain. There was Maria, who had seen her doppelganger every day for a week before her twin sister, who she didn't know existed, showed up on her doorstep, and Tom, who swore his double had taken over his life for 3 days while he watched helpless from the shadows. The more I read, the more convinced I became that what had happened to me was part of something bigger, something that defied explanation but was undeniably real. I started compiling notes, trying to find patterns in the experiences. Most sightings happened in remote areas. Many involved some kind of stress or danger, and almost all of them reported the same feeling of unease, of wrongness that I had felt as I delved deeper into my research. I started to feel a sense of purpose again. Maybe I couldn't explain what had happened to me, but I could try to understand it, and maybe, just maybe, I could help others who are going through the same thing. It's been years now since my experience in the Red Hills. I'd like to say that I've moved on, that I've put it all behind me, but the truth is it's still with me every day. I still see my double. Sometimes not as often as I used to, but enough to remind me that what happened was real. I've learned to live with it, to accept it as part of my reality. I never went hiking again. The thought of being out in the wilderness alone with my doppelganger is too much to bear, but I found other ways to challenge myself to feel alive. I run the forum now. It's grown over the years, become a real community. We support each other, share our experiences, and try to make sense of the impossible things we've seen. Sometimes late at night, I find myself wondering what would have happened if IID tried to approach my double in those Red Hills. Would it have disappeared like it always did, or would something else have happened, something I can't even imagine? I don't think I'll ever know the answer to that question, but I do know this. Whatever happened to me out there in Sion County, whatever that thing was that wore my face and mimicked my movements, it changed me forever. And sometimes, when I catch a glimpse of movement in a mirror or a shadowy figure in my peripheral vision, I can't help but wonder, is it still out there walking parallel to me, just waiting for our paths to cross again? I don't know if anyone will believe this story. Hell, half the time, I don't believe it myself, but I know what I saw out there and what I've seen since. And if by sharing this, I can help even one person feel less alone in their impossible experience, then it will have been worth it. So if you're reading this and you've seen something you can't explain, something that no one else believes, know that you're not alone. There are others out there who have seen the impossible, and we're here ready to listen, ready to believe, because in a world where you can meet your own double on a lonely hill in Oklahoma, anything is possible. And sometimes the only way to stay sane is to embrace the impossible.